I'm here with Kyle Langham at Dfinity today, asking him the number one question I have for him. Kyle, you do data and analytics at Dfinity. You're an insider in the crypto industry. How can people tell the difference between a project that's actually valuable in crypto versus one that doesn't have any real value, that's just faking? Like, which metrics matter? How can people really do their own research in crypto and figure out which things in their portfolio are worth holding and which things they might want to get rid of?
Yeah, that's a great question and a hard one to answer. And I'll preface this by saying my own track record in crypto for my own investment strategy hasn't always been perfect. But what I will say is there's definitely a thing called vanity metrics within our industry. The two biggest ones, there's three big ones: TVL, um, the volume, and active wallets. And it's not hard to imagine why these are vanity metrics, right? I literally could create a script that just goes off and sends any token between any number of wallets, just keep spinning up wallets, send that token around a bunch of times, and all of a sudden now I've got a lot of users, and I've got a lot of volume. TVL is real easy. You mint a couple tokens that you put on a swap, you control the supply, so you can pump the token to whatever value you want it to be, and then you stake that or do whatever you want. So if you can control the supply of a token, and since we're in this industry, or we're in this phase of crypto's life cycle where there's millions of tokens being created every day, it's really, really not hard to fake these ones. The metric that I think is the most important is network fees. That's harder to fake because that actually costs money. Somebody has to pay money to do that. And so when you look at like Token Terminal and you just do network fees for whether it's for like apps, so you can see a lot of DEXs, how much fees they generate, or even L1 blockchains, you see the ones that you would expect to see there. You see Solana, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Tron, Internet Computer. Those are pretty much the top five. And so those are kind of a good sign of like, yeah, that's where value actually is accruing on the network. People are using the chain and they find enough value into it that they're actually spending money on it. So that's from like a metrics perspective. The other thing to consider is, I think it's like Warren Buffett who used to say, if you if you buy a product and you like it, buy the stock. So that to me is like the biggest indicator is if you're using a certain chain and you're using the apps on that chain and you love it, and then like that's a good sign that that chain is thriving. Whether that now thriving could be, it could have certain technological capabilities, it could have certain communities, like it reach network effects in certain areas. But either way, the fact like that's a good sign of like, hey, I see value in this app, therefore this app might have value for other people, and this app or the blockchain that it's built on will probably get some of that value as well.
So with that in mind, to summarize what you just said, TVL, active wallets, and volume can all easily be inflated a lot. Network revenue is something that's expensive to fake, so not something most people would fake, and a good indication how much the chain's being used. With anything else to add on that?
No, I mean, no, I think that's it. I mean, I've talked with some people, partners in the, potential partners and stuff like that, and they'll be like, "Hey, what's your TVL on ICP?" And it's kind of one of those things in the back of my mind. I'm like, I could make it. What do you want me to make it? Like, if that's what this is about, then I can make it. And it just kind of shows the idiocracy sometimes in our industry, and the fact that we haven't done a great job of quantifying our field. But I think people are coming around to that and understanding. You see it in the Bitcoin L2 space a lot too. Like I'm very proud of the fact that like CKBTC is pretty much minted only to be used, whereas on a lot of Bitcoin L2s, you'll see they'll basically pay. So, I launch a Bitcoin L2, let's call it Kyle's Bitcoin chain. And maybe I know of a guy who's got, 30,000 Bitcoin. And I say, I'm going to pay you 10% yield if you just park that on my chain. So now I can say I have this massive amount liquidity. And honestly, in a lot of those cases, they're not even parking it on the chain. Anyways, that's a whole different story about how to like truly lie. But anyways, so that's like a great example of like, is having somebody that you're paying them 10% yield or 20% yield to park money on your chain, is that actually value add? No. But gives you a nice number that you can go around and talk to investors about and say, look how much people trust me because they put this much money on my chain.
So in an environment like that where people are willing to go that far just for appearances, my biggest challenge as a content creator is how do I effectively communicate in this environment? Because I can sit there and make ICP's awesome videos every day and people get tired of watching those. And I make a video saying something else is terrible and then I get a bunch of new subscribers, but then people are angry. It's like, how do I communicate? How can we communicate value and be respectful of other people's creations while at the same time, like telling investors what they really need to hear and what they need to look at in a way that they actually will click on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have the best answer, and if I did, maybe I'd have your job instead. But what I will say is, one thing that I think we've done in the ICP community is focus only on the tech side of blockchain. Blockchains also bring a lot of other values like network effects for users, like again liquidity, network effects, and so some chains execute even with what we tend to like to point out as like inferior technology, but they still execute in a certain way that is actually extremely valuable. Like they've got great like market traction in, let's say, like institutional fields, or they've got great recognition, or they have a great developer base or something like that. And just I think we can acknowledge that some chains are doing really good on those other types of non-technical aspects, and that by combining, by bringing our tech into their platform, both parties get the best of both worlds. Whatever other chains they get the great tech for ICP, and then from ICP we get access into those different markets. That's kind of how I think of it. Again, I mean, my recommendation is like focus on the things you like. So like the apps you use that you wouldn't give up, that kind of stuff. And I think people can kind of rally around that.
So actually use the technology and don't just let your coins be parked on an exchange.
I mean, that's what mass adoption looks like.
Well, thank you, Kyle. Any other tips for crypto investors that have a portfolio of 50 coins and, from what would you do in their shoes to try and figure out which of these are good and which ones aren't?
I mean, I'm sticking to the Warren Buffett, if you like a product, buy its stock. If I use an app, I'll buy its token. If I use a chain, I'll buy its token. And limiting to that and not trying to chase whatever the narrative is or whatever, if I don't understand it, I don't want to buy it. And the way I understand it is by using it.
It's fantastic. That's the same place I've got to is on ICP. It's like I'm only going to buy a coin if there's an app that I'm actually using every day or, consistently every week. Like if I'm using it, then maybe I'll consider buying the token, but not the other way around.
I do always come back to the idea of blockchain in a lot of ways, like governance, in terms of speed, in terms of memification. Like there's a lot of ways in which crypto is completely novel. And so humans have never came across a lot of these things before. So allow yourself to make some mistakes because you're doing something that people had never done before. Your parents had never done it, that kind of stuff. So if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world.
Well, thank you, Kyle. And where's the best place to follow you if people want more of your updates directly?
On Twitter, I'm Kyle Langham. I'd recommend following the Dfinity account as well to stay up to date on tech advances. And yeah, Kyle Langham, usually on X is where I am.
All right. Thank you very much, Kyle.
Thanks, Jerry.